All right, team, welcome to another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matt Hamilton. Delighted to have your company with me once again for a little bit of a change in direction from a leadership perspective. Today, we're going to be focusing on leading from a financial perspective. You know, all of us want to make sure that we and those we love are secure financially. And it is, in fact, an act of leadership to make sure that you are schooled up and able to provide for yourself and those you love. Now, whether it's a goal that you have, you know, it might be putting your kids through college or university when they're older. It might be helping them buy their first home, for example, when they are adults, if they're only very young now. And you might be wondering, how on earth can you do that given the cost of living is what it is? And oftentimes it can feel like there's not a lot left in the paycheck once you've met all of your expenses. It does seem to be getting more and more like that, doesn't it, as time goes on, unless you're on a very, very good wage. But certainly the average person is probably feeling the pinch a little bit. And I wanted to explore the concept of investing. And the reason this is close to my heart is because as someone who's been investing for 15 or more years now, I remember how it felt at the start. And I certainly wasn't in a position where I felt like I could take any form of confident leadership in that area. So I embarked on a bit of a journey with respect to learning how different investment vehicles worked. And I was fascinated with the share market. And it always seemed like a really scary thing because I didn't know a lot about it. And I must admit, I did think in the beginning that it was something that only wealthy people did. And then I picked up one book in an airport departure lounge when I was waiting for a flight. I probably would have been around 21 or 22 years old at the time, I think. And it was a book by Tony Robbins. You might know that name. And the book is called Money, Master the Game. And I read this book and it changed my life actually, because it got me investing in the share market for the first time and helped me to enter that space with a little bit of knowledge and confidence as a result. And I recommend that you go ahead, guys, and grab yourself a copy of that book. It is really useful for explaining to you something that we're going to discuss today, and that is the index fund. Okay, so I've only got you guys for 20 minutes, so we won't labor anything too hardcore. I just want to give you guys a bit of an overview, and then I want you to go and get more detail in that book. But basically, the issue with investing for a lot of people is, one, they don't understand it. They don't even know how to get started. So we'll go through that today. But also, they're worried about losing all their money. You know, the stock market is something that you will know crashes from time to time, and it's all doom and gloom on the news. Sometimes you might look at that and go, well, there's definitely not somewhere that I want to put my money. And so there's a few really key items that we need to check off from a financial responsibility perspective before we even think about getting invested in the stock market. So right off the top, they are: one, we need to know what we're investing in and have confidence in that. And two, anything that we put into the stock market, I would advise you to look at it as a long-term hold. And by long-term, I'm talking 15 to 20 plus years. Okay, so you should not need that money before you put it in to the stock market. Okay, it is a set and forget type of scenario that I'm going to be advocating for. Now, off the top, guys, I am not a licensed financial advisor. Okay, so it is completely up to you whether you listen to me, and I take no responsibility for any negative investment outcomes that you might experience as a result of listening to me. But all I will say is that I've accumulated this knowledge through reading from people who do know what they're doing, and I have about 15 years worth of experience now from a practical perspective. I've lost money, I've made money, and this is what has worked for me. So I'll share that with you, and if you'd like to go and use that to inform your approach, then you're more than welcome to do that. So firstly, guys, investing used to be for wealthy people only. What changed that was the internet. Okay, and the access that we now have to apps, i.e. brokerage apps, which are simply put trading platforms. You used to have to go to the bank. You used to have a fairly significant minimum amount of money that you had to put up before you would be allowed to invest. All right, so there was a lot of people involved. You had to know the right people. You had to be able to afford to do it, and it was really quite a high barrier to entry. And that's before you start talking about, okay, well, how do we know what we even want to invest in? Now, fast forward to 2025, it's a completely different landscape. And surprisingly, I think some people are still under the impression that investing in the share market is something that only is available to wealthy people. And that could not be further from the truth, guys. Investing has never been more accessible to the average working class man and woman. All you need is about $200. $200 and a bank account linked to a brokerage app. A good example of a brokerage app that I've had a really good experience with is CMC Markets. You can download that on any app store and that'll work. And there's many others as well. And all you do is you electronically link your bank account to that brokerage app and you literally just transfer money to that investing account. It's as easy as could be. And about $200, $200 to $250 is the minimum amount that you need usually to trade. Okay, so it has never been more accessible. If you can get together that amount of money every month, set it aside, then you're in a position to start investing. So that's the first thing. It's no longer this exclusive club. Anybody that makes a full-time wage and has a little bit of money to put aside each month can do it. That's the equivalent of, 4 or 5 Uber Eats orders for dinner if you're a single person. So let's put it into perspective. $200. And then we come to the question of why should you do it? And the reason I would be advocating that you all embark on an investment journey and you take that leadership of your family, your personal financial circumstances in a more hands-on way, is because it's really hard to get ahead if you're working for somebody else and that's the only stream of income that you have, because those bills are really substantial. For the average person, if you don't have an inheritance or you don't have parents to help you out with buying a house, and you've got a student debt, whatever it might be, a couple of kids, things get expensive really, really quickly, and there's not a lot left over a lot of the time, even if you're making good money these days. So you need to bring more money in, and preferably, I love this concept, you need to have your money working for you while you sleep. All right, so that's the reason that we want to do it, and I am of the view, through the reading that I've done and becoming aware of the opinions that a lot of very wealthy people have shared through those resources, I am of the opinion that the share market is the greatest wealth creation vehicle that we've ever seen. You just have to know how to use it. Now, people will often suggest that you hire a wealth consultant or you invest your money in a managed fund, which simply put is basically a company that says, you give us your money and for a fee, we will invest it using our expertise and you don't have to worry about anything. So you don't do any direct investing in the share market. We do it all for you. All you've got to do is hand over your money and then we'll send you a report every so often. Now, the problem with that is that they charge fairly significant fees. Okay, it can be anywhere between 3 and 5%, sometimes more. They all vary. But that is quite a significant dent in your returns over a long time. If we look at that 15 to 20 year investment timeline that we're going to play with today. that really adds up, guys. Compound interest is a very substantial economic force that you need to be aware of. Those fees increase, those fees impact your returns quite significantly over that period. Now, because those fees are high, and because it's so easy these days to simply invest yourself, I think it's plausible that if you guys can learn a little and have a bit of an idea where to start, it makes sense that you avoid those managed funds and you manage your portfolio yourself so that you obtain all of your returns rather than handing them over to somebody else. And I'm going to share with you a couple of investment platforms that will enable you to do that. Now, I mentioned the word index fund. You might go, what the hell is an index fund? An index fund, quite simply, is an investment product which has, let's say, the top 300 to 500 holdings on any given stock exchange. So let's use the American stock exchange, for example, the S&P 500. The top 10 holdings for that index fund that deals with that particular stock market is Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, Tesla, and Berkshire Hathaway. That's the top 10. That ETF, electronically traded fund, is comprised of many, many more very big household company names in that particular portfolio. And what they do is they simply divvy up the percentage of the portfolio amongst those massive companies, the top 300 to 500, as I said. So for example, it might be comprised of 6% Microsoft, 6% Nvidia, 5% Apple, so on and so forth. And what they do is they package that up into one share price, which comprises of one stock. So let's say, for argument's sake, it might be $100 per stock in this index fund. And for that share price of $100, that gives you 6% ownership of Microsoft, Nvidia, 5% of Apple, so on and so forth as the ratios play out. Now, the reason that's really, really important is because of this word that is key in investing called diversification. The biggest thing that we're worried about on the stock market, certainly from a layman's perspective, is losing all of our money. And the way that you reduce the chances as much as reasonably possible of that happening is by making sure you are really well diversified across, firstly, very reputable, i.e. too big to fail companies, and preferably a lot of them. But also, the gold standard is to make sure that not only are you diversified across lots of too big to fail companies that are proven staples in the culture, but you want to make sure that you're diversified across multiple industries as well. So you might have banking, you might have technology, you might have entertainment, so on and so forth. Nothing available does that better than those index funds. Now, there were many organizations that offer these products, but the one that I use personally and have done for a long, long time is a company called Vanguard. So Google them and have a look at their offerings. Now, the reason I like Vanguard is, firstly, they're proven and tested over time, but also they're available all over the world. I'm in Australia. If I log on to my CMC investing platform, my brokerage platform, once I've transferred my money across to that platform, I can invest literally anywhere in the world through index funds. So even though I live in Australia, I can invest on the American Stock Exchange through that ETF. All I have to do is type in the code VTI, and that will bring up in the list of available stocks that option for me. And I can simply buy through that app, and automatically I will be able to start building a holding that comprises of some of the world's biggest companies. So you can do that for the European stock exchanges, the UK stock exchanges, the Australian stock exchanges. It is so accessible. It's absolutely chalk and cheese compared to what it used to be back in the day. Now, the other reason that the index funds really tick these boxes from an investment safety perspective, not only is it because we can access any stock in the world, and not only any stock in the world, but a really diversified portfolio of stock anywhere in the world, but the expense ratio is also significantly more attractive than those managed funds that I spoke about. So whereas with a managed fund, you might be paying, anywhere upwards of 3% annually on your returns, for the Vanguard managed funds, for example, you're paying anywhere from 0.03% annually to 0.07% annually. That is a management fee, but it is ultra low compared to what other managed funds will charge you, where you're actually dealing with a person, okay, and where you're going in for meetings, so on and so forth. So I haven't found a cheaper investment vehicle with that sort of exposure on the share market anywhere. So do some Googling into Vanguard. There are plenty of others, guys, by the way. It's not like it's the only good investment platform to use, but do some Googling because they have some fantastic access for all of us to enjoy all around the world. So the fees, check. Diversification across some of the world's biggest companies, check. Why is that important? Well, one, the fees mean that we don't have to give away more of our returns than what we'd like to. But also, B, it means that we get the smoothest ride on the share market possible. Because we're so well diversified, it limits our wild swings, and it means that we have a relatively steady experience. Now, don't get me wrong, the share market being what it is will absolutely go through times of volatility. I'll tell you a little story. Before buying my first house, liquidated all of my shares, and I used that money to go and help me buy my house. And then a little while later, when I got on top of the expenses, I thought I'm going to start investing again. And that was 2019, just before COVID hit. And the stock code that I was invested in was the Vanguard Australian Shares Index Fund, VAS.AX. Beautiful fund, super low fee, 0.07% annually. I think 300 of Australia's biggest, most reputable companies, all packaged up into one beautiful fund. And at the time, I paid about $95 a share for that. Cue COVID, and about 6 months later, after I'd accumulated numerous shares at $95 a share, that stock price fell to $63 a share. So I lost essentially 33% of my portfolio in about 3 months. Now, knowing what I know, and obviously with the mentality that this is a long-term hold that we're talking with, i.e., 20 plus years for me, I knew that this just represented a great opportunity to buy at really basement low prices. And I knew that given enough time, if I was to keep investing, these prices would rise. And eventually they did. And now that same share price for VAS.AX is up around $111 a share. So if I had panicked and liquidated everything, I would have lost a lot of money. But if you have the right timeline in mind and you're disciplined and you can keep your emotions under control and you don't need access to that money, you can actually take advantage of some really great prices. Warren Buffett used to say you should be buying when there is blood in the streets. Okay, there's nothing like a crisis to send prices down to lows, at which point you take advantage. So that is the mentality that you need to invest. All right, now what are some UK, European equivalents of that indexed fund? So let's just, I won't go through them all, but let's just stick to, for example, the FTSE in Europe. The ETF code is VGK. And what is it? Well, it provides you exposure to developed European equity markets by tracking the FTSE Developed Europe All Cap index. The expense ratio is only 0.06% per annum, and the holdings, total number of holdings in that portfolio is 1,235 holdings. So you will own a small slice of 1,200 plus companies. You really would struggle to get more diversification than that. Now let's get specific. The top holdings in that are all European blue chip names. You might recognize some of them. So Safran SA, British American Tobacco, ABB, so on and so forth. Now, the exposure, as I said, is very, very hard to beat, and so are the fees. But let's have a look at what investing just $200 a fortnight over a long period of time might look like. Because you remember I said that compound interest is one of the very strongest forces in finance. So the US version of the Vanguard Index Fund that I shared with you was VTI. So the 30-year compound annual return until July of 2025 was 10.3% per annum. That is dividends reinvested. Since inception, 2001, the average return is 8.8% per year. So the 8.8% figure reflects the long-term average from inception, and that was through to late 2024. The 10.3% figure reflects the performance over the last 30 years up to mid-2025, and that is talking about the index as a whole that it tracks, okay? Obviously, the fund's only been in existence since 2001. Now, that is significant because what it means is that if we plug some numbers in, we can start to get a good idea of the amount of money that it could mean for us. So if you contribute $200 every fortnight into that VTI index fund and you reinvest all of your dividends at an 8.8% annual average return for 25 years. So think about that as, okay, you've got really small children right now, but you want to put them through college when they're in their mid-20s or close to mid-20s, whatever the time frame is for you. Maybe you want to help them buy their first house. This is a very legitimate vehicle to enable that to happen at a relatively small immediate cost to you. So let's do the numbers. You contribute $200 a fortnight, every fortnight, into that index fund. You invest or reinvest all returns at 8.8% annual average return for 25 years. And your total portfolio value will grow to about $445,000. And that is more than enough to make a bit of a dent into a college loan. And certainly a very good deposit for a house. Now that assumes steady contributions and consistent reinvestment for that compound growth to work its magic. So I recognize, guys, that this is all probably really dense stuff. It's probably not super entertaining listening, but it is crucially important if you want to break through and you want to get ahead a little bit quicker, that you consider this as an investment vehicle that is available to you. You will be surprised at how accessible and how easy it is for you to start investing. All right, the barrier to entry is just non-existent these days. All you need, as I said, is the brokerage app. There are many, and your bank account linked to it. It's as simple as that. I do recommend that you go ahead and that you read Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. I will attempt to drop a link into the show notes actually so that you can have a link to Amazon or something like that and go and purchase it. But this really does give you the genuine prospect of being financially secure to the point where you can help your kids get ahead a little bit in the future. If you don't have kids, well then there you go. That's a really nice nest egg. And as I said, $200 a fortnight. You know, if you're both working, both full-time work factored into the equation, I would suggest that's probably quite achievable for most people. And of course, the more you can contribute, the bigger that number gets. So get yourself a compound interest calculator online as well and start crunching some numbers, guys. You might be surprised. Finally, don't let fear stop you, all right? Anything that is unknown is scary. don't just listen to what I'm saying and go and do it with no further research. I want you to read, I want you to research, and I want you to go in fully confident and fully aware of what you're doing. And I promise you, you will find it very, very worthwhile. Before we do end, I just want to acknowledge that I've said dividends a couple of times and haven't quite explained what that is. Essentially, that annual return of, I think it was, 8.8%, that is comprised of just capital appreciation, i.e. the stocks that comprise that index fund appreciating in value. But it also is made up of dividend return, which is essentially where the companies take a portion of their profits and they pay it back to their shareholders. Now, on the Australian Stock Exchange, where I'm invested, that's about 3.5% to 4% currently. Our annual average return is very similar to the American index fund that I quoted. That one's at about, I think, 8 to 9% since inception. So 4% of that is made up of dividends, and then the other 4.5 to 5 comprises of just normal appreciation in stock value. So it's a combined figure. So if you didn't want to save up a nest egg to put someone through college or, help your kids buy a house, you were just doing it for some extra income eventually for yourself, how that would work is you would build up your portfolio to whatever point you were comfortable, and then you simply ask the brokerage service to stop reinvesting those dividends and instead pay them to your bank account of choice, and they will do that. And usually dividends are paid quarterly, so 4 times a year, every 3 months. If you have a substantial portfolio, that can be a very, very nice addition to your bank account in combination with your wage, so on and so forth, superannuation if you're in Australia as well. Multiple sources of income. So that is available to you as well. Dividends will either be paid direct to your bank account, or you participate in what's called a dividend reinvestment plan, where the organization simply just buys more stock automatically with those dividends that are owed to you every quarter. You have the option with respect to which one you want to participate in, and you can switch back and forth whenever you choose. So that is something also to think about from a strategic perspective. Maybe you want to get $500,000 in shares, and as you can see, that seems to be very achievable if you can put some change aside and invest for the long term. If you have $500,000 in shares and you're earning 4% on that from a dividend perspective annually, it works out to a nice little bit of change coming your way on the side. So don't underestimate the impact long term that it could have on your ability to support yourself and others and have multiple streams of income. Guys, that is a lot of information. Your heads are probably spinning. Go away and do that research. Again, Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. Literally a life-changing book. I'll drop a link to it in the show notes. Go ahead, have a read. And if you've got any further questions on this, make sure you flick the show a question. I haven't plugged this one for a while, but at the top of the show notes is the send us a text button. It's anonymous. I don't have your phone number or anything like that. You literally just hit that button and you basically send me a question, and then it comes direct to my dashboard, and I will essentially be able to answer them on the show from there. So if you've got any questions about this, or if anything's confusing, let me know and we'll see if we can help. Guys, as always, if you're getting value from the show, please subscribe, make sure you tell a friend, and until next time, stay safe, and I'll speak to you later.